Hello and welcome to The Passion Show. My name is Phil and joining me as always is my co-host Kyle.
Hello.
And this week our guest is Paul Lang.
Hello.
In today's episode, Paul's here to talk about what he does in the magazine, book and writing industry. Me and Phil both know you from your work on Doctor Who Adventures magazine, which we'll talk about a lot more in detail later. But I know you've been writing for over 20 years. For starters, what are the projects that you've worked on?
Oh, well, obviously I've done a lot of Doctor Who stuff over the years. I've written the Doctor Who annual for, I think, about the last 5 years.
Wow,
and I'm just in the middle of doing another one of those at the moment.
Which is fascinating in itself. Like, both of us used to collect those, so it's
I had everyone.
Yeah, so I've done that. I've obviously done Doctor Who Adventures. I used to compile the Time Team column for Doctor Who magazine, so I did that as well for quite a few years.
Oh, wow.
I've written stuff about Doctor Who for Doctor Who.tv, which is BBC Studios' commercial Doctor Who website. I did loads of listicles and stuff for them last year, so I've done quite a lot of Doctor Who stuff. And apart from that, I've written loads of stuff about pop music and TV and soaps over the years. My main job at the moment is being editor of a soap magazine's website, so I write a lot about soaps as well, and all of that too.
Well, so like EastEnders and Coronation Street and stuff?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
I think to start off, we'll go to like the very start of your career if you want, just by saying like, how did you get into the idea of like writing and editing and being involved with magazines? Where did that start for you?
Well, when I was at school, I was a big fan of pop music magazines, so I used to read Smash Hits and Number One, and I always thought that would be something really cool to do and really fun. And they were kind of magazines that almost had their own language and made you feel like you were part of a special club when you read them, because this was years before the internet or anything like that. So you had to get all your information just from these magazines, and it just seemed like the most incredible world. And I just always thought, I'd love to be part of that. So that's kind of what I was working towards.
So from like that point on, you were just sort of really interested in this industry?
Yeah, I used to make my own little comics and magazines and stuff when I was at school.
Oh, wow.
And
yeah, I find it really interesting the way you say it makes you part of like a club, because that's really what the Doctor Who Adventures felt like. It felt like this place for like real fans to find out all the real intricacies of the show, and I know for me it kind of like expanded the universe and made it, it gave me knowledge on like the rest of Doctor Who that the show wouldn't give you.
And it kept the show alive during like its like hiatus. Like it kept me interested in the show. It was really like, it made it like more than other shows in the fact that like it was always alive. When the show was airing, there were like episode guides about like each episode that was coming out. Once the show was on the hiatus, there'd still be Doctor Who Adventures every week or 2 weeks, and then when Sarah Jane Adventures came out, you'd do like episode guides on that, and then like it'd be like the build up to like Christmas and just stuff like that. So it was like very, very like important to the life of the show.
Oh, really glad to hear that you enjoyed it, because
definitely.
We absolutely loved making it. We loved hearing from readers at the time. It's interesting what you say about it, sort of keeping it alive for you reading it when the program wasn't on, because that was something we were worried about at the start, that it might be sort of quite popular when the episodes were actually on, and it would tail right off. And I think when we started, we came out every 2 weeks, and they sort of said, well, we'll come out every 2 weeks while it's on, but after that we'll probably drop back to once a month, because people won't want to buy a magazine that's just about Doctor Who every 2 weeks all year round. But as it turned out, we were totally wrong, and we kept on going every 2 weeks, and then eventually
every week,
every single week, which was, I mean, that was a massive thing for a magazine just about a single topic. That's almost never happens.
Yeah, how many weeks a year was Doctor Who on? Something like 10 or something like that? And
but about 12 or 13 weeks a year plus Christmas.
Yeah. So
and we had to kind of plan the whole year basically, so that we had a massive push when it was on TV, but so that we still made something that was enjoyable and entertaining kind of all year round.
And there were also like other Doctor Who magazines going on at the same time. There was like Battles in Time and the Doctor Who magazine as well. So it did suit the niche of like younger Doctor Who fans. Like I remember being about 8.
Yeah.
I used to always think, you never talk about Torchwood in this. Why don't you talk about Torchwood?
We weren't allowed to talk about Torchwood because that was kind of much too old for our target readers.
Yeah,
really.
definitely.
I find it interesting the way you said you eventually made it go weekly on a weekly basis, despite you starting on a bi-weekly one, because me and Kyle both used to have our local shop where the shop man had have
Keep it behind the counter.
Yeah, keep our special one with our little name on the top corner, just to make sure we definitely got it.
Yeah, because I think when we started, we thought initially I think we printed 70,000 of the first issue, something like that.
Yeah. Wow.
Or did we sell 70,000? I can't remember.
Either way, it's quite good.
I think we sold 70,000 of the first issue, and we thought usually you sell the most of your first issue, and then it goes down after that.
Yeah,
and it's quite unusual for it to sort of reach those heights again. And the second one did actually go down to about 50, but then from there it kind of went up and up.
Wow.
Every issue, and the issue that came out between the two episodes of Human Nature and Family of Blood, by then we were selling more than 200,000 copies.
That's insane. I feel like magazines, isn't it?
Yeah, which is nuts. There's a lot of magazines that would love to sell that many copies these days. I don't think that there are many that do now, whatever sort of magazine they are.
So it says on your website that you worked on like almost every aspect of that magazine in particular.
Not all at the same time.
Yeah, of course.
But when I started out as a designer. So I've been working on Top of the Pops magazine, which was at BBC Magazines, and one day I was at the printer picking something up, and I saw these printouts for what turned out to be Doctor Who Adventures, and I was a big Doctor Who fan, so as soon as I saw these, I had to go and sort of find out who's making this magazine and can I be part of it. So I kind of pushed my way in and managed to get a job on it. First of all, I was art editor of the magazine, and then I did that for the first 3 or 4 years, and then I became deputy editor. So that meant I kind of looked at the magazine sort of more broadly. And then the editor left, so I was acting editor for a little while, and then a new editor came in. I went back to being deputy editor again, which I think was my favourite job I had on the magazine, because I just got to go and sort of stick my nose into anything that I wanted, really.
So you talked about like the way you were a big Doctor Who fan, and that sort of attracted you to the magazine itself. Do you want to just give us an insight to like your relationship with Doctor Who? Like, did you watch it when you were a kid and stuff?
I did. The first one I remember consciously sitting down to watch was episode 1 of Castrovalva. I lived in Scotland, and for some reason in Scotland they showed that episode in the middle of the afternoon, so it was on at a time I wouldn't normally have been watching it. So
yeah,
and from then on I was just totally obsessed. I had to have all the Doctor Who stuff that was on sale from that point onwards. I watched it, recorded it, watched it again and again and again.
Oh my god.
Drove my family insane.
Who was your doctor?
So my first Doctor was Peter Davison, so I'll always have a soft spot for him. And then my kind of other Doctor is David Tennant, because he was
brilliant.
when Doctor Adventures came along, and when all that was getting going. So those are my two top guys, definitely.
So in terms of like Doctor Who Adventures as well, so I remember one particular issue that I think it was a Halloween issue. There was a mask that came with it. It was a Davros mask, and it came with like 5 claws. And I actually went as Davros for Halloween. My dad like made this amazing costume. It was brilliant. He like used like all bits like lying around the house, and I went to a Halloween party, and like I won like best costume for it, and like that's always like one of my childhood memories with Doctor Who. So like I'd like to thank you for that.
Oh, brilliant.
For winning best prize.
Did you send in a picture to the magazine?
I think I did, and I can't remember whether I was in it or not. It was years ago now, but I'm pretty sure I did. I used to like enter the competitions. I remember entering one for the life-size canine.
Yeah, I think I entered one for a life-size Dalek once, as if I thought I'd get that. I'd be allowed that.
You know, someone did win it, and I think it went to their school though, because it was too big.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
It's funny you mentioned the Davros mask, because even though we were kind of really successful in selling loads of magazines, so that meant we could do, you know, really ridiculously good free gifts like that. We still had a kind of strict budget, and our government buyer came over to us and said, "Oh, guys, I know you want to do this Davros mask, and we can afford to do the mask, but we can't afford to do 10 claws.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it was 5.
Yeah, and we just said, well, that's fine because he's only got one hand. So
If they knew this stuff, it wouldn't matter.
Our government buyer went away quite happy then because she thought she was coming over to really disappoint us, but we wanted it to be accurate. So Davros only had 5 claws.
The actual like information that went into the magazines was like very specialized, like, but it was also tailored, wasn't it, to suit a younger audience? And I think that was it really walks the line, doesn't it, of not being too much but still, like, you know,
informative.
Yeah, it's informative, but it's not intense. It was always good to learn about the universe. So like, how much like work went into that, into like one issue, for example?
Well, it was kind of, you know, exactly the amount of time that we had. So when it was fortnightly, it was 2 weeks' work. And when it was weekly, it was 1. Some things we kind of planned over a longer time, but, you know, it all had to be kind of conceived in a way that we could do it in the time that we had. But it's interesting what you said about it sort of walking the line between being specialist and being accessible to everyone, because that was something that we were always kind of under scrutiny for, because all of us working on the magazine were massive Doctor Who nerds, and I think some of our bosses sometimes thought that we were filling it with stuff that was just going over the heads of a lot of the readers, but we kind of knew that our readers knew the stuff and that this was the kind of stuff they wanted to read. So we would often get a bit of pressure to not dumb down the magazine, but to make the facts a bit more basic and not go into so much detail. But we were convinced that our readers really did want that stuff, and it was at the right sort of level. So I'm glad to hear you say that you like that.
Yeah, definitely. I think like my Doctor Who knowledge comes from like these magazines, and
because they were before like the internet was like massive. Like 2008, like we were kids. We were only allowed like on the internet for like half an hour a day or something like that. So
yeah. And you know, I think when you get a magazine that's sort of made by the BBC and it's got the BBC's logo on the front, parents know that they can trust it and it's something that they can give to their kids without worrying about what's inside. And you know, we were always careful to never put anything too horrific in. And you know, we published a lot of screen grabs from episodes, and you always had to be aware that something that you saw for like a fraction of a second on the screen, you wouldn't necessarily want to put a screen grab of that in the magazine that someone could really, really sort of pore over and see the absolute horror of some of the things that you saw just a tiny flash of, because that could be quite disturbing. So you had to remember stuff like that as well.
I remember my bedroom walls were like covered in the posters from the magazines.
Yeah,
like,
same.
My cupboards were like covered in the stickers.
Yeah, the stickers. I always loved doing the stickers. They took a long time to do, but they were always really good fun.
There was so many of them, like on a page.
Yeah. Sometimes have like about 200 stickers in one set, because there'd be 2 massive sheets and then some little shiny ones and puffy ones and all.
Yeah, I remember.
And we did try and put as many as possible onto a sheet, because we knew that people loved them. They were decorating the school books and the walls, and probably stuff they shouldn't have been decorating with them.
In the magazines, they'd always have what's coming up next week in next week's episode, wouldn't it? So did you get to see episodes early because of that?
We did. We used to get a DVD in. That's how old we all are. We used to get the DVD would come in the post.
Yeah,
it was quite old school, and in our office there was actually a Doctor Who room which was decorated out like the TARDIS. And
that's so cool.
It had sort of TARDIS walls and stuff, and it was just a meeting room that anyone could book at the BBC. But we used to book it on a Friday afternoon, and we'd go out to the shop and get loads of snacks and drinks and stuff, and we would sit and watch the Doctor Who episode, which was usually for the week after.
Yeah.
So that then we would be able to make that next week's magazine. So we would do that just as a group. There would be about 7 or 8 of us. We used to have a great time. We would do it right at the end of the day on a Friday as our treat before we went home.
That's cool.
So nice. I can just imagine that being like a Doctor Who fan's dream come true, to be able to
really cool.
Not only write and input so much into this world and have so much of an effect, but also just get to see the episodes early. And I just think that's really like interesting as a fan myself, to be able to hear that you've done something like this. It's just like, it's so interesting.
It was interesting as well, because sometimes the episodes weren't finished.
I was going to say, they did not be finished.
Yeah, so it would cut to what was supposed to be a CGI monster or something, chasing someone, and it would just be a blank screen with a caption saying "Monster will be here." It was quite funny. You had to try and imagine what was going to happen.
Did you get told what you weren't allowed to put into like the preview in case spoilers?
Yeah, definitely. Before the episodes went out, you could only put we used to get a 5-line summary, and you could only really have that much in. But we would kind of scour any clips that had been on TV or any interviews that people had given, so that we could put any extra information in that we could. But they were very because they wanted people to enjoy the episodes as they went out.
Mm-hmm.
They were quite strict about what we got to put in advance, and you would only get like maybe 2 or 3 pictures from each episode before they went out. But we would have the scripts, when they were filming them. So we would have sort of known what was coming up from the year before, pretty much.
Oh wow! So you were like really ahead.
Yeah, they used to start filming in July, and we would get the scripts just every time they started filming a new episode.
Yeah.
So we knew what was coming up, and that would help us plan what we were going to do in the magazine. Because really, when you've seen Doctor Who on a Saturday, when the magazine comes out the next week, you want to be reading about the episode you've seen.
Yeah, it needs to be current.
Yeah, not old stuff.
Obviously, you're working on projects for a long time. Like, you were working on Doctor Who adventures, like, we're in different jobs as well for such a long time. How do you manage to, like, keep it fresh, not only for, like, the reader, but for yourself, like, in terms of, like, motivation to keep going and keep writing?
I think for Doctor Who, because each episode's so different, you never really get bored of writing about them because they don't really seem the same.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense. You always find something new and interesting and funny in each one. Yeah. And, if you really love Doctor Who, then you're going to want to write about it.
Yeah, just like gush over it.
Yeah.
I didn't
I have had
expect that,
times over the years where I've done less Doctor Who stuff and I've been doing other things. I finished on the magazine in 2012.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't really do a lot over the next 2 or 3 years after that. Then I started doing the annuals again, so I got a bit more involved.
You did mention before that you've done like quite a few other things, like you've written for pop magazines and soap ones. So is like variety something that you enjoy in your like editorial career? Yeah,
I do. I'm mostly freelance now. I work a couple of days a week on the soap magazine, and the rest of the time I'm doing lots of different things. So at the moment I'm doing a lot of Doctor Who stuff for next Christmas.
Yeah,
I'm doing the Doctor Who annual. I'm doing another book as well. So I'll kind of be doing that up until about May, but then after that there probably won't be as much Doctor Who stuff because it tends to come out around Christmas. So I'll go off and do something else, and then by the time Doctor Who's back on again, I'll be raring to write about it some more. It's good to have the variety, and I switch between writing and designing quite a lot as well, so always doing different stuff, which I enjoy.
Yeah, because it seemed like through your website you take on a lot of jobs, because I wasn't sure whether it was writing or editing when we first made like the connection, but it's like a big, like it's a variety, isn't it?
A lot of the stuff on my website is stuff that I've designed, but you kind of get involved in the whole process when you work on a magazine anyway. You come up with feature ideas and headlines and stuff. And writers come up with ideas for photo shoots and, have their say in what stuff looks like. So everyone gets involved outside their own area.
It seems like quite a collaborative effort, the whole creating a magazine or a book relating to like Doctor Who or something. Doing
a book is kind of can be a bit more of a solitary thing usually. Generally just... When I'm doing the Doctor Who annual, I just sit and do that on my own, and I write it out and I describe all the stuff that I want, and then it goes off to a designer and they do their bit. And then the next time I see it usually is when it comes out in the shops.
Yeah, that's so mad.
when you're working in a magazine and you're in an office with all your colleagues every day, it tends to be a bit more collaborative. Yeah.
I saw you worked on the Doctor Who official guide book. Said like in the brief it was like to make it look more like an Empire magazine. What was that like working on?
Oh, which one was that? Sorry.
The
brilliant book.
Yeah, that one. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That was a really cool one to do. I did that with Clayton Hickman, who had been editor of Doctor Who magazine. I knew him really well anyway, so he went to BBC Books and pitched the idea of basically like a Doctor Who annual, but for grown-ups.
Mm-hmm.
based around each series. We did the first one of those, and that was amazing to do because they gave us loads of money to spend on it. And we just went off and commissioned all these really expensive illustrations and photography and everything. And you don't get the chance to do that very often, so that was brilliant fun.
And the fact that like it's a merge between like Doctor Who magazine and Doctor Who Adventures as well, like that's really interesting.
We used to see each other when we went down to the studios in Cardiff, and you know, we all became friends and we socialised together because we were kind of doing the same job just for different age groups. And I've got lots of Doctor Who magazine editors as friends now. In fact, on the Soap magazine, there are 2 former editors of Doctor Who magazine working there as well. So we've got quite a little club.
That's sick.
We've got Tom Spilsbury there, and we've got Gary Gillett as well. So there's the 3 of us all sitting, boring everyone about Doctor Who every day.
I do think it's interesting how Doctor Who like bridges so many generations, and it can appeal to so many. Like with the Doctor Who Adventures, you're obviously appealing to children, but as you move up and you can appeal to adults, but it's all the same thing. And I just find that fascinating, like how big Doctor Who is and how much of an impact it's had on people's lives.
I know it's really cool. Like when I go to some events, like I sometimes go to the Quiz of Wrestle on the Doctor Who quiz, and I have people come up and say hi to me who are adults now, and they say, "Oh, we love Doctor Who magazine, Doctor Who Adventure, sorry, when we were 7 or 8, and you printed my picture, and we had this letter in, and I remember this bit and that bit." I just think it's really fun that they're still fans and that they remember all that. That's kind of part of their childhood now. It's really cool.
It seems like such a unique combination of things, like the idea of writing for magazines and Doctor Who. It's like 2 worlds coming together almost, because you can enjoy magazines, but people who just love Doctor Who, they go to it because they want to know as much as possible. Like that's what I did anyway.
Yeah, I think the fact that there's still so many different publications about Doctor Who, it's crazy, because you've still got Doctor Who magazine, and there's all the websites and podcasts and stuff that people do now. Younger fans now are making their own videos and making their own podcasts. So maybe that's kind of filling the gap, because Doctor Who Adventures isn't there anymore, and they're doing their own thing.
We said before we started recording that you were working on that Eagle Moss figurine collection. Like you were writing the next issue for that.
Yeah, they're doing a little mini series of Time Lords, and Neil Corey, who's the editor of that, knew I was a big fan of a particular Time Lord, so he asked me if I wanted to write some little magazines that were going to come with these figurines. So I said, yeah, that would be amazing. So I've been brushing up on my Time Lord knowledge over the last couple of months. So the first 2 of those are out in March, I think, and then they come out, I think, once a month after that. So, and I think there's 2 figures in each issue and a magazine. So I got the first one in the post actually the other day, and it looks pretty cool.
I saw that on Instagram.
Yeah.
You mentioned about like you're sort of trying to learn as much as you can or remember as much as you can about Time Lords. But what about when you're approached with like a totally new subject? Like I know going through your website, you've worked on like such a huge variety of stuff. How do you approach like a new subject and having to write about a new subject and researching and stuff?
It can be quite hard sometimes. Like I did some Minecraft stuff. Over the last couple of years, and I'm not a gamer at all, so that was quite hard to get my head around, because Minecraft is pretty intense.
It can be,
with the sort of knowledge that you have to have even to just start. I did try and play it, and my character fell on his back, and I couldn't get him to stand back up. So that was as far as I got with Minecraft. So I just had to try and look at the other books that they'd done already and get to know the world. I still couldn't play it, but you know, I can tell you what a creeper is now.
Yeah, the spreads like they look incredible. I've got them on the screen now, and they also they're dead informative as well. So you definitely must have done your research.
Well, for Minecraft, I only designed the pages, and that one proper Minecraft expert did the writing for that.
Yeah.
But I still have to know, you know, for all those kind of exploded views and things you get in there, I have to know how all the blocks fit together and all that. So I did learn a bit about that. So I'm not totally Minecraft ignorant now. And then I guess it's the same for soaps, because I tend to watch Coronation Street and EastEnders, but for my job, I have to know about the others as well. So you just got to do your research and hopefully know a bit about what you're talking about.
Even though you might not want to watch just like the other soaps that you got to write about, you're still happy to watch them if it like goes into your work, if it feeds into your work, which I find like,
I think
that's quite
if I had
interesting.
time, I would probably watch them all. But there's so many episodes of each soap on every week that
can get quite intense.
I have to on my Virgin box. You can watch things at double speed now.
Yeah.
I sometimes have to watch them on double speed just to have time to watch them.
That's a commitment.
I still watch Doctor Who on normal speed though, so I'm not a total savage.
What do you think about the change in like the print industry, in that like a lot of things are moving online, sort of away from magazines?
Yeah.
What do you think of that?
I think it's kind of a shame that a lot of these things don't exist anymore, but it's just the way the world's going, isn't it?
Yeah.
Kids have all got iPads and phones, and that's where they are. So you have to give them what they want where they are, instead of clinging onto a particular format.
I think to me though, like having the physical like magazine is a lot more of an art form than I don't think physical magazines will disappear altogether, because especially for stuff like Doctor Who, where the fans, they've kind of got that collector gene, and they really want to have a physical item in front of them that they can put on their shelf and know that they've got it and admire it and see the whole collection start to build. So I think you can kind of see it in the stuff that's coming out now, because Doctor Who Adventures was a kind of really mass market mainstream thing, and it doesn't really exist anymore, sadly. But apart from special issues that they do occasionally, but stuff like the figurine collection that we just talked about, which it's more niche, but that sort of stuff has probably got a brighter future, because collectors are going to want to buy it, and it's really appealing.
I know for me personally, I got as many of these magazines as I could, like every week, and I was also getting the Battles in Time as well, and I still have them. Like I've still got a huge stack, and I think like last year...
There must be a pretty huge stack, because we did like about 400 odd issues of Doctor Who Adventures, didn't we?
I've got like drawers full of them. It's insane. And my mum was like, "Oh, why didn't you get rid of them? You're growing up now." And I'm like, "No, I don't want to. I like having them. I like I like flicking through them every now and then, because it is nice." And like before we started recording, I was looking through some of the like old covers and stuff like that, and it's amazing how quickly it jumps back into your consciousness. You're like, "Oh yeah, I remember that. I remember what was in that issue. I remember there was like, that puzzle." And it's amazing how it comes back to you so quickly.
It's funny, isn't it? I think a lot of fans, like, they're fans of things when they're kids, and maybe they're expected to kind of grow out of it, and they get rid of all their stuff. When they get a bit older, they just have to spend all their money buying it all again on eBay, don't they?
I've done a bit of that, to be fair.
Hang on to that stuff, because you're going to want it back one day, and it's probably going to be much more expensive than what you paid for it to start with. I've got to admit that I didn't keep all of mine, because I've worked on so many magazines over the years that I need like an extra wing on my house to keep it all in. But I've kept some of my favourite ones.
What ones have you kept? Any in particular that stand out to you? That you can
I
remember?
really loved the first Christmas issue we did, which had Catherine Tate on the cover. That was the first time we'd kind of done a bigger issue. I really liked that one. I loved, again, another Christmas one. I loved our Kylie Voyage of the Damned.
I've got that one on my screen right now.
And we had two different covers. We had a Doctor and an Astrid cover, and we had to kind of really fight to do the Kylie cover, because
really?
Our publishers were like, "Oh, Kylie, do any kids even know who she is? Do you think we'll sell any copies?"
Kylie Minogue.
No. Well, an 8-year-old might not necessarily. Kylie wouldn't have been front and center of their world at that time, but we just thought, even if our usual readers don't buy it, then older readers might, and Kylie fans might, just because it was
like
such
the
a cool thing to happen. Yeah. And I think in the end, we put out something like 3/4 David and 1/4 Kylie. And obviously, what happened was that everyone was saying, "No, we can't get a Kylie one anywhere. We really want a Kylie one. Have you got any Kylie ones?"
It's always the way.
Yeah. And then we did another one later on that had a lenticular cover, which around the time the Pandorica Opens was on, which I really liked, except it's got the TARDIS in the background, and it was supposed to have the Pandorica, and they changed it when I was on holiday.
Oh
and
no!
I was really mad when I got back.
Is that because of stuff like spoilers and that? Like
it was just because someone said, "Oh, no one will know what that thing sitting behind all those monsters is, so just put the TARDIS there." so that's what happened. And I was like, "Yeah, none of the 9 million people that watched Doctor Who on Saturday are going to remember what that thing was that was in it all the way through." Yeah, we didn't have too many incidents like that though. Usually people just left us alone to do our own thing.
It was interesting that you said about the 2 Christmas issues, because I do remember like specifically like those were like big issues, like 50 pages, and they'd have like so many free gifts.
I've got a picture of me with one Christmas issue, and it's like about twice as wide as my head. I think that was one that we had a massive calendar in, and it had.
I remember that.
A massive bit of cardboard in it to make it look huge. And I think because we did that, we actually got magazines that big banned from Tesco, so we were never allowed to do it again, because all these things came into Tesco and they were trying to get them into the stands for the magazines, and they were going absolutely crazy saying, "Why have you made it so big? We don't know where to put them."
Here's a question for you. It might be a bit of a strange one. Is there a psychological aspect to it in terms of attracting people, in terms of like the colours that you use on the front cover and stuff like that?
People say it's psychological. It's usually just stuff that they have made up and believed for years. And just, if anyone ever tells you that something is the first rule of something, then that's just something they've made up. It's just a little rubbish.
Fair enough.
Just ignore them. But, traditionally in magazines, it's kind of a widely held belief that the colour green doesn't sell. But obviously for Doctor Who Adventures, green was like our main colour, because so many monsters were green. We used to use that fluoro green ink all the time.
Yeah,
lots of Slovene.
It sort of hints towards sci-fi and aliens, doesn't it? You know what I mean?
Yeah. So you get all that. No one was ever very happy if we had anything that looked a bit pink, because they thought it would put boys off buying it. Because even though our readership was pretty much half and half, boys and girls, they were always scared that if you made it too girly or too pink or whatever, then boys would stop buying it, because they're much more easily influenced that way, whereas girls would just have bought the magazine they wanted regardless of what was in it.
That brings me on to a question that I was going to ask. In terms of catering towards boys and girls in the projects that you've worked on, you redesigned the Toxic magazine, and like it used to be like, I remember collecting them as a kid, like before you redesigned it, and they were all about like poo jokes and farts and stuff like that, and it was repulsive to me. And I think like a lot of boy like catered things are like that. So like when you redesigned it, you like the new logo now, it's more sophisticated, and it's less of that like repulsive aspect that people have like associated with boys. And then with girls, your girl magazines don't come across as patronizing or condescending. So like I respect that.
Oh, that's good. It's not always easy to make that sort of stuff happen, because people's opinions about it are quite entrenched. We used to go out to schools and we'd have kids into the office to look at magazines, and the stuff that they liked wasn't always what you expected. Like a lot of girls were saying, "Why have we only got this crap available to read? Why is it all pink? Why is it all about unicorns and stuff? I don't care about unicorns. I'm into science, I'm into gaming, I'm into all this stuff, and all you give me is unicorns and pictures of milkshakes or whatever."
But then obviously you had like people above you like pushing for that kind of things.
Yeah, and I think people can be a bit influenced by what their own kids like in publishing. It's quite, My Little Johnny loves fart jokes, so we should have loads of them in the magazine.
It sounds like the way you talk about the magazine and the readership, it sounds like, and you give a lot more agency to a younger audience than maybe most people would, the way you talk about like you wanted them to enjoy it and you wanted it to be the best for them, and still include a lot of information from Doctor Who but not be too intense. It's just
Yeah,
interesting
definitely.
how much agency you provided to young people when they usually don't get that much.
Yeah, I think it's really important because I think kids are smart and they know when someone's serving them up
Hmm.
a load of old rubbish. And some of the magazines that you see, there's this one that I particularly hate. It's for girls, and it's always got some like really cheap Barbie type doll glued to the front, and
Yeah.
it just always looks absolutely terrible. And then you open it up, and it looks even worse. And I would just be really embarrassed if I was telling a kid that was what I thought they should be reading. So I always try and credit them with a bit of intelligence and
Yeah, definitely.
give them stuff that is, that's challenging, but not in an unfriendly way. You don't want to put them off and make them think that it's not for them. You want everyone to feel involved and included.
Yeah, that's
Mm.
respectable. I really respect that.
So we're media students, so obviously like going into writing or editing is like within our parameters. So what would you
Yeah.
say to like especially like the listeners as well who want to get into like magazines and writing and stuff like that? What would you recommend for them to like what paths would you recommend for them to go down?
Well, when I did my degree, it was a long time ago, and I'm sure there are a lot more options now. But the reason I picked my particular degree was that you got to do quite a long work placement
Yeah.
in it, and that was the thing that I really wanted to do. And going back to what I said earlier, I applied to work on all the kind of teen pop magazines.
Yeah. Is this while you're at uni? Yeah.
Yeah, so we had to sort of identify where we wanted to go
Yeah.
and try and sort of sort out our own placements, basically by cold calling and writing off to people and just doing it all on spec. And I wanted to do something with a kind of pop magazine
Yeah.
because that was what I got into in the first place. And my uni kind of really tried to put me off and saying, "Oh, you're probably not going to be able to get a placement at one of these places," but I did. So
Yeah.
I was really lucky, and my placement was at BBC Magazines,
Wow.
and that was in 1995. And when I was there, I met my lovely friend Nikki, who will probably listen to this because
Hello, Nikki.
still friends now. And she really encouraged me and got me designing pages on the magazine I was working on, which was a magazine called Girl Talk, which is still going now, and I still work on now, which is nuts. And thanks to her support and the support of other people I work with there, a lot of whom I'm still in touch with, it just kind of opened all those doors for me. And it was a few years before I went back to work there on Top of the Pops, but I'd always kept in touch
Yeah.
with them, and kind of without doing that, I think it would be much more difficult. So it's if you can get in somewhere and make yourself useful and be nice
Yeah.
to people,
Make connections
and
as well. Seems
yeah,
like the best
yeah.
sort of goal.
do everything they ask you to do, smile, don't complain, be nice. That goes a long way, definitely.
Well, go on.
You've got to be kind of useful as well.
Yeah. You got to put in your work and stuff like that
Yeah,
and prove
yeah,
yourself.
definitely. You're probably not going to go in somewhere and be doing super glamorous stuff. You're not going to be out at showbiz parties or whatever, or meeting celebrities.
Yeah.
And if you get work experience on the kind of thing I was doing, and I think a lot of people's expectations are different. So
Yeah, well, it sounds like when you were working on Doctor Who Adventures as well, you sort of worked your way up into more senior roles, and it sounds
I
like
did,
that's
yeah.
like quite a good way to go
Yeah.
through it.
Yeah, that was quite unusual actually, because I started there as a designer, and then I ended up moving into more sort of general editorial role, and not many people did that, so I kind of had to argue for that quite strongly.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it was worth doing, because I think the more experience you have with different stuff, the more useful you are as an employee, because then you can get involved in a bit of everything, and that's what I've been able to do since. So it's been good for me.
Right, brilliant. So I think we'll sort of start wrapping it up there. So yeah, so thanks to Kyle as always for being my co-host.
Thank you, Phil.
Thanks so much to Paul for coming on and telling us about his magazines. It's been honestly really fascinating. We really appreciated it.
And also thanks a lot for creating them. Like, they were really important to me as a child growing up.
Yeah, I think same goes for both of us.
Yeah.
Special thanks.
I'm sorry to your parents that they're all still in a massive box in their house.
Just chilling there. My mum will probably listen to this as well. But yeah, if you have any passions yourself that you want us to talk about, feel free to leave them in the comments below.
Or hit us up in the DMs if you want to come on the show yourself.
Yeah, if you want to come on the show, we're always looking for guests. But other than that, we'll see you next time. And again, special thanks to Paul Lang.
Have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye.